I just got finished editing this and I noticed that I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, so it's like too foolish of me to not present myself. But my name is Leonardo. You guys can call me Lion. At least that's my nickname in League of Legends. So just have a nice time watching this tutorial. I'll show you guys first of all what is this tutorial about, what is the final thing that you guys can expect from this code. Simply because every time I search for code on YouTube, I really like to see like the end result. What am I going to get after almost 20 minutes of video, right? So here is what you guys might get at the end. Python retrieval. It's a simple chat system on which we can use a previous run. I explained this during the video. I explained how we can use this, the same IDs of assistants, the same IDs from the thread and from the run. This is just for us to start like a pretty fresh assistant. Do you want to ask a question? Yes, I want to ask a question. What is your question? Let me make the same question I made in the video. I can't. What colors do lions have? And this response will be from this lion.txt file right here. And it's ready. What colors do lions have? Then the assistant said, I'll need to find some information on the colorization of lion. I'll start by reviewing the available documents to see if there is any relevant information on the color of lions. Right. So then it responded with lions can have fur in various colors, including light buff, silver gray, yellowish red, and all this is inside that txt. And we can find that, and we even found a way to retrieve that. This piece of code right here retrieved the fur varies in color, light buff to silver gray, and like back at the text we can find the fur varies. See? So that's it. That's what you guys can expect. Have a nice video. Let's give a look at this file that we're going to be using here. It's lions.txt. It's a basic file that I got from Wikipedia. Like I just Control-C, Control-V the Wikipedia page about lions here. And yeah, we're going to be making some questions later on. See, like there's this question right here: Red Panther, Blue Panthera atro. They made lion League of Legends figure here. Green Panthera Leo, and we're going to try to make our LLM retrieve that information. Okay, so let's go over to the retrieval. First off, we're going to make some imports as usual. And the imports here are, pretty common for, like, in the code interpreter code, the same imports were made. These imports are importing OpenAI, import OpenAI. Then you go to the import.env, import OS. This is just because we're going to be accessing the lions.txt, right? The .env, like obviously we're going to be using this file right here, which I don't think is really interesting for me to show you guys, or else I'll have to delete my key from OpenAI. From time, import sleep. And this sleep function is just because we're going to be using sleep to wait for the information to be generated by the API, and then we retrieve that information whenever it's done. Import JSON, simply because, as we did in the code interpreter, we're going to be registering the IDs created so that we don't create a new ID for every assistant, right? And you guys will understand this better further on. From types, import simple namespace. I didn't explain much of this in the previous video, but this is basically like in situations on which, for you guys that's more familiar with JavaScript, you guys would use something like const object, like, right? You would have an object like this, and inside this object you would have a parameter, and that would be something like hello, right? And to access this parameter, you could simply say object.parameter. Okay, pretty simple. And for us to create this structure, we will have to use the simple namespace, and further on you'll understand better why this is. But before that, let's import our .env. Load.env client equals to OpenAI and the API key we're going to be using is the os get env. I think it's OpenAI API key that's in there. Yeah. Ask if the bot should use the previous run. Okay, and now we're going to build that logic for us to reusing the same assistant, same thread, and same run. Okay, this might expire after some time, so it won't work if you produce the same ID today and try to use it tomorrow. Probably it won't work. But like for the meanwhile, while we're testing this is just for testing purpose, it will work normally. Use run. Let's use that. Input, use the previous run. And here's where you're going to be able to choose, like, if Y, then yeah, we're going to be using the data from the JSON. If no, then don't use it, and let's create a new one. So yeah, let's just like place the yes logic here. If use run, then if use run is equal to Y, then we should, here we should open the run JSON file, load it into a variable, and then just assign those values from the JSON file to a variable. Okay, so with open run.json as JSON file, data will be equal to JSON, then we load in the JSON file. Okay, now let's remove an indentation here because we need to place the assistant. Okay, this is going to hold the assistant ID. You can do that doing this, right? And there is a whole other logic that you could just place the ID inside here. But the simple namespace is a feature inside Python that just allows us to not have to do all that work. So with simple namespace, this is how you could be placing your ID. The ID is basically going to hold the assistant ID. We're going to save into the JSON just like this. Thread is equal to simple namespace ID data thread ID. And let's just copy and paste this just so it doesn't get too repetitive, right? It's going to be the same for these two places. Here we're going to hold the run. Here we're going to be holding the file. Okay, and inside here is the run ID. Up here we need to place some semicolons, file ID. Okay, so for the yes condition, we're going to get those data. But for the no condition, and this no condition is the first one that we're going to be using at our first creation, let's create all these IDs. And now is actually when we start to build the actual logic. Inside this logic, we use the use run equal to no, right? The use run is the variable that contains our input when we are asked if we want to use previous run or not. Upon choosing no, we create the assistant. Okay, the first thing that we have to create is the assistant. So create the assistant. After creating the assistant, we have to get the file also. I believe that it wouldn't make sense to get the file previously. So yeah, we're just going to use it right here. Client files create file equals to open lines txt rb, and inside this we'll be using the purpose assistants. This is found inside the OpenAI API reference. We'll get the assistant equals to client.beta. Yeah, we have to assign this beta every time now, at least for now, and while it is a beta. Assistants create, then we create the first parameter is name equals to PDF searcher. Second parameter are the instructions, I believe. Instructions equals to you are a helpful PDF searcher. I think this emphasizes for the LLM that it should always use the file. I have had problems with the LLM in which it doesn't consider the files, and I just get really pissed off with this. Tools, so here we're going to have an array of objects in which this object should return a type of retrieval. This is where in code interpreter you would use something otherwise than retrieval, we could use code interpreter, and we can use functions, I believe. So now we place the model, and the model I really like to use is GPT 3.5 Turbo 1106. This is the cheapest model that uses all these assistance features. File IDs equals to file ID. File IDs, we're going to make this equal to, and this is an array, so you could say like file 1, file 2 if you have multiple files here. But for this one, we're going to just be using that lion.txt file, so we're importing that up here, and yeah, we're going to be using that unique file ID there. Next up, we have to create a thread. Creating the thread. This thread could be created with information inside it, but since we have this, since we're trying to build a chatbot like feeling, I don't feel the need to actually give it previous questions like on its creation. So to do that, to not make any questions, you can simply create the thread with beta threads create, and that's it. So at this point, we have all the informations we need. We have the assistant ID, we have the thread ID, and the file ID. I mean, really, now that I think about it, the file ID maybe isn't really needed, simply because if the user chooses yes, and then he's going to use an assistant. And this assistant was already created with that file ID. So we can erase this file ID up here and just continue our code, placing a while true here. This is simply because we're going to loop until the user prompts out of this loop. And for him to prompt out of this loop, we can just like user choice is equal to the same input, like that, almost the same input. Do you want to ask a question? And if yes or no, then do something with that information. Right? Okay, so if the user chooses no, that he doesn't want to make a question, then this while should break right here, right? It doesn't make sense for it to do anything else if the user doesn't want to continue the conversation. Like, we could get out of this conversation, just Control-C, but it just gives a strange interaction. So if the choice wasn't no, then we should get the question. And to get this question, user question equals to input of, so what is your question? So now that we have the user question, we can send this over to the thread. And to send this to the thread, I mean, remember that we didn't create the thread with any messages. So the LLM, like the whole assistant, they don't have anything yet. And for us to add this in the conversation with this chatbot, let's just place a message here, adding message to thread. To add this message, let's just create the message variable that holds the creation of client beta threads messages, always on the plural. Create, then parentheses, thread ID equals to thread ID. The role will be of a user, so this is what the user asked, and the content would be user underline question. Right? We're associating which thread is this message going to be inserted into. We're saying that this is the role of the user and the content is the user's question. Okay, now that we created the message, let's create the run. This create the run is basically telling the model that has all the information needed. Now run this process and return me the answer to the potential question. So creating the run. The run will be created with this, it will be inserted inside this variable, and it uses the client beta threads runs create parentheses. It's going to use this thread ID right here, thread ID. It's going to have the parameter of the assistant ID placed right here. Next up, we have to save the assistant. So okay, at this point, we have the run, we have the assistant, we have the thread ID, we have the file ID. We can save this all inside our JSON. I mean, we don't really need to save that file ID. Remember that we're not using that anymore, so save the assistant. This is the same thing we did in the code interpreter, on which we're going to create a variable that's gonna serve like, it's gonna look like a payload with assistant ID, and this ID will be the assistant ID here. Thread ID will be thread.id. Run ID will be the run, not with a semicolon, run ID. And yeah, that's it. Then what we have to do here is just with open run.json. See, I'm gonna use the same, I shouldn't be using the same file that I'm using for the code interpreter because it just changes the information there, but whatever. I'm never going to be using both at the same time. So JSON file, right, JSON dump the data JSON file. Okay, that's it. I mean, now we have to retrieve the information, right? Retrieve information until it's complete. Now we have a run. Now imagine that the process is running in the back. Now we can use an asynchronous call just to wait for it to be completed and then use that answer. But since we're on Python and it's a bit strange doing that in Python, we're just going to retrieve the answer inside this run. And we retrieve that with client beta threads retrieve, right? Okay. We're going to retrieve data from the thread ID, thread ID, run ID, from run ID. Okay, right. And at the first run, like this is possibly not going to be complete, but if it is, the loop that we're going to create will identify that. So if the run status is different from completed, then sleep for 2 seconds. Then after these 2 seconds, run again and client.beta.threads.runs.retrieve parentheses thread ID equals to thread ID. We're going to be using that thread run ID equal to run ID. Now the if status is failed, we're going to print that it failed. Then we break out of it. Okay, this is simply because sometimes it will fail. Like I've gotten a lot of failed response, failed status, simply like, and especially when OpenAI is making some kind of update. So I mean, it's normal if that happens. I think I placed too much equals here. Yeah, in Python, 2 equals just do the work. So after we get out of this loop right here, this while, if we get out of it, it means that it was completed. And if it's completed, then we get the list of message. Get the list of messages. Okay, these messages can be placed in here. So messages equals to client beta threads messages, always in the plural, and the list. Thread ID parameter holds thread ID. Okay, the only message we need here is the thread ID. All right, now that we're done with that, we could just print the, okay, let's comment this, print the messages here. Now it's time to see the actual messages. So for a message in reverse, and always do this reverse simply because the way that OpenAI returns this, and it's strange the way that they return it, but it makes sense in the flow of the way that it receives information. But as a structured chatbot, it doesn't. Like, just reverse it, it'll make much more sense. So messages data, this would be printing the message.role plus message content. This content is 0 text value, I believe. Print n, just so it skips a line every time after a message. I mean, I really hope this all works. I've typed this so many times. Cleared out Python retrieval. Okay, so the first thing it needs to do is just ask for it to use the previous run. So no, I don't want to use the previous run. And I should place something like instructing the user, rather if he should type yes or no, just like I did now. Do you want to ask a question? Yes, I want to ask a question. What is your question? Let's go to the lions.txt, and I was going to ask it about the colors. Which are the 3 colors a lion can have? So now hopefully it starts doing all this process. Wow, that was fast. Which, yeah, now he shows like the interaction of the user and the assistant. And if we hadn't reversed this, it would be like the assistant, then the user. So it's strange. I will start by checking the contents of the file to see if it contains information about the color of the lions. So after he checked the content of the file, it provided this answer. Lions can have fur colors ranging from light buff to silvery gray, yellowish red, and dark brown. I mean, these aren't like these 3 colors right here, but I mean, probably there's, let's see, dark brown. Oh, there's another, the fur varies in color. Oh, so there's another section that talked about the colors. So it's successfully found that section better than us. I mean, better than me actually. Additionally, newborn lions have dark spots that fade. Like, it gave an additional information that's just awesome. And it provided this source right here. For us to access that source, we just have to get the annotations back. And how do we access these annotations? Just to separate things, let's place a print source start right here. Do that. Okay. For annotation in, and this is found inside the messages. It's the same variable, so we're not going to have to call another endpoint or use the API again. It's messages data. I always think like it's always in the plural because I got this wrong so many times. Text annotation. See, I think this is plural too. Okay, right. So it's going to loop inside all the sources that were found along the file, and it's going to return it. Let's place a space here and print annotation file citation. Whoa. Okay, print /n. Right. So now, do you want to ask a question? No, I don't want to ask a question. Let's clear that. Let's Python retrieval and use the previous run. Here's where we can just yes here. Do you want to ask a question? Yes, I want to ask a question. Let's make the same question we made previously. And now it will show the same, like here, you see like up here, it's the same question we made previously. And it's just like asking it again, which are the 3 colors the assistant lions can have for color. It just didn't make that. I will start by checking the contents of the file to see, like it didn't say that this time. Nevertheless, it found the source. So source start, I didn't place a source end or source finish, but the fur varies in color from light buff to silver gray. Yeah, this is just like the exact text, and it's showing like which text from the file, which section, which chunk of text from our real sized text that it used to produce its answer. And that's it for this video. I don't think there's much more we can talk about here. Actually, there are a lot of things that we can implement with this, but I mean, that's up to you guys. Whatever you guys want me to bring up in the channel, just comment below and I will be more than happy to help you guys with that. And let's build an awesome community in which we are able to create actual awesome projects. See you guys in the next video. Till then.